everyone, welcome to Watercolor Wednesday. I'm Bonnie Krebs, creator of Watercolor the Art Impressions Way, and I'm back with another project for you. This one is a fun little night scene. I've got a little cabin on the bank and a little boat in the front. Super easy to do, only needs 4 stamps, so that's always really fun to do a simple little project like that that doesn't need a ton of things. So we are going to create this little scene. I'm going to show you how to do it, and we're going to need just a few things. So we're going to start out with a little mini cabin set. So I am actually using this one here, but any of these little cabins, any of these 6 would work perfectly there, or maybe a combination of 2 of them, maybe the little house and maybe the barn. Use your imagination. We are also going to use this little boat from the boat set, this one right here. From the branches set, any of these actually would work too. I'm going to use this one. And then in our foliage set, the favorite is this vine right here. So we're going to use that one. And we are going to get started. We're going to start out with a little marked off area. So I marked off a square that's about 3 inches square, and I just used a block actually and traced around it. That's the easiest way. And I'm going to take some masking tape now and make sure I cover all around it. So I am protecting the rest of my watercolor paper so I don't get ink outside of the lines. This is, if you've never tried one of these are really fun to do, especially if you are struggling with sky, sky and ground, because it tends to get away from you sometimes. And when you have these really nice borders, it's not an issue. So this is a really fun way to learn to watercolor, and especially, like I said, if you're struggling with some of those things, try it this way. Okay, so let's get going. We're going to start out with that little structure, and I'm going to ink it. Actually, I'm going to ink it in gray. This is just a light gray. There's nothing special about this gray, but I'm going to be putting this in the background, and because it's a night sky, I really want to focus on the shadows. So that's why we're going with a really light color. And I'm just going to make sure I get this inked up right. And I'm going to stamp it sort of up in the left corner. So right about there, that's about right. And then we're going to stamp that little boat into the foreground. And we're going to use the brown. Actually, let's use the blue first. We're going to use the dark blue. And then over the top, the dark brown. And then I'm going to stamp it off. I really don't want this too dark. So I'm going to stamp it off just like that. And then I'm going to stamp it in the foreground, probably right here. That looks pretty good. And then one more thing. So in the background, we're going to create a little moon here. And I'm just going to use a really fine tip pencil and just draw a little circle. Now, if you really want a perfect circle, maybe you have a punch that could create a little tiny circle like this, or maybe cut it out of masking paper. That would work too. And then what we're doing is we don't want to color in this area here, so I'm just making this little circle so that I don't run my color across that little moon. Okay, so let's go on to the next step, and that is to add our masking fluid into the front. So you can see on that original, we've got all these white blooms in the front. That's masking fluid. So we're going to cover up those areas so that we can stamp over the top. And I'm going to use my Molotov. This is well loved, but I really love these. These are so great, and they just work great. So when you're using this Molotov, we've used it in the past, and lots of times, small areas, so little dots like this. But when you're doing these flowers into the foreground, you want to make sure that those areas are bigger. So pump that pen, and then just get this on here so that you have larger areas like this. So I pump it, and then I just kind of smooth it around a little bit. And you can do some areas that are larger and some that are smaller. Let's get some over here. And you can do some small ones too, but make sure you get some large areas covered. And make sure you get enough on here. If it's too thin, it's not going to cover and leave those areas white. Okay, that looks pretty good. We're going to let this dry, and I will be right back. Now that my masking fluid is dry, I can go on to the next step, and that is to add in our water and sky. So I'm going to take some of this dark blue and add it to my palette, quite a bit of it. And then I'm going to add some purple and a little black. Okay, so the first thing we want to do, and actually I'm switching brushes now. So this is a number 6 because I'm doing all of this, you know, a lot of this area that I'm brushing in. So I'm going to switch to a number 6. Now, if you don't have one, you can use your number 4 brush. That's perfectly fine. It's just a little bit easier with a larger brush to brush in a lot of color like this. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is decide where the horizon line is. So I'm just going to come down just like this, and then bring this line all the way across here. And then sort of decide how the ground is going to go. And I can just bring it out like this. And there's no right or wrong way to do this. You can decide this, you know, however you want to. How this is going to go. And we're going to actually brush this now, this color, all the way down. So just keep dipping your brush in water, pulling out some of this color, and just keep working your way down. Keep your hands straight. And then try to leave, you know, a few white spots. Try not to get too close to this boat so you don't pull out too much color. It will want to bleed out. And then bring this color all the way down over the top of the masking fluid. We've got the idea, or we're given the impression that the flowers are kind of hanging out over the water. So we want to kind of see this blue underneath. Just like this. Bring that clear over to the edge. And then the more, you know, that you add, the more passes that you make, the darker it's going to get. And then we're ready now to go to the sky. So I'm going to add a little purple to this blue. I want to make that sky really dark. And just brush this into all around. Careful not to get any color on your little moon. And just keep brushing that on. Fun and so relaxing. And this is where I'm going to add a little of this black. So I'm going to kind of mix some of this into the blue and just add this into the very top of the sky. I want to make sure the sky is really, really dark. And I think I'll add some more blue in here. So I can really get this dark. Okay, that looks pretty good. Let's add a little bit more to the water. Okay, so I'm going to switch back now to my other brush, my number 4, and let's do some work now on this little barn. So I'm going to start out by pulling the color out of the lines. So when we're doing these little night scenes, you know, the thing to focus on really is the shadow. That's sort of the most dramatic thing about it, and that's kind of where we want to draw the attention to. So we want to make sure that we really, really show that. So this is the dark side over here, and I'm just coloring this all in solid. It's dark blue. And this here on this side, this would be dark too. And I'm just going to add a little brown to my palette. And add a little black to it. Gonna mix this up and make sure this is really light, and just brush a little of this onto the roof. These little areas in here, and then in here, this would be really dark. Really dark. And I'm just going to go over this shadow again. Make sure this is really dark. And then I'm going to take some of this blue now and pull this shadow over to the side. Okay, so let's go on to the little boat, and we're going to do the same thing here. We're going to drag the color out of the lines on these little oars too. And the back of that boat, this area here, this is going to be darker. That's where that shadow is. And you can see the boat is tipped just a little bit, so that's going to create a little shadow in here. And of course, where that boat is sitting in the water, there's going to be a shadow there. So this is going to be a shadow here. And then our little oars. And I think I'll make something a little decorative on here. So I think I'll add a little color. And just take a little bit of this and just make something decorative on here. Okay. And that's about all we have to do on that little boat. Doesn't take a lot. Okay, so now we're ready to finish up our flowers here, and I'm going to use this is kind of a blue-green, so this is a 249, this is a cool green. And we've got all this cool stuff going on here, so we're going to use a cool green on this foliage. And I'm just going to stamp it in here, pretty dark. And just get enough color in here, especially in the corners. And doesn't really matter how you stamp this, you know, because we're just getting the color in here. Okay, so I'm back to my number 4 brush, and I'm just going to add some water to it now. Just dab. Get it in the corner. Make sure that that corner is really dark. And just kind of bring it all the way over. And we can add a little blue in here, right off of the palette. Make it even darker. Okay, so let's add that little branch. So I'm going to ink this in 2 colors. I don't want to set that on my I don't want to set that on my painting. I don't want it to get wet. So I'm going to ink it in the black. And then I'm going to ink it in the brown, dark brown. And then I'm just going to stamp it kind of here off the side. Just like so. And that looks pretty good. As soon as this is dry, make sure that your ink is really dry before you take this masking fluid off. You don't want to smear anything. So this feels like it's pretty dry. So I think we're ready to take this off. And it just comes off really easy with your finger. Just rub it off. And you've got these little flowers in the foreground. And if you want to, you can add some little centers to them. Maybe some green. Just really lightly. Just like so. Super cute. Okay, so I'm going to erase my pencil line now off of that little moon. And I'm just going to use a pigment pen now. So this is a Signo Uniball pigment pen, white. And I'm just going to kind of go over this little moon. And you can add a few highlights in here too. So you could add some highlights into the water where this little moonlight is shining down. You could add a little bit onto the edge of the roof like this. Maybe onto these little branches. And maybe a little bit into the water. Just light, just super light. And now we're ready to take off our masking tape. And then don't forget to erase these pencil lines all around the edge. Just erase those off of there. And your little painting is finished. So cute. Be sure to sign and date. That is a necessity. And you could put that on a card or put it in a frame and give it to someone. You're going to make their day. Thanks so much for watching. Oh, one more thing. The stars in the sky. How could we have forgotten that? Gotta have the little stars in the sky. Okay, and now it is finished. Sign and date, put it on a card or put it in a frame. Thanks so much for watching. I appreciate it so much. Please, if you like this video, give me a thumbs up. Subscribe, ring that bell, and I'll see you again next week.